Greetings everyone, and welcome back to the shed of endless possibilities. To all the family members and subscribers, I hope that you're all okay. I appreciate you all. Please keep those comments coming. Right folks, I'm going to do a short story today from my book Ordo Strigoi Vii, a Vampire's Journal. Now, this story is not actually about vampires. This is about a sea witch. Please bear with me. I know that I'm not the best reader in the world, but I hope you enjoy the story. Are you sitting comfortably? Then I will begin. Elanora lived in a tumbled-down cottage between the coastal villages of Ravenscar and Robin Hood's Bay. She lived there with her cat Marmalade, a ginger and white Tom. The cottage was surrounded by ghost bushes, which are beautiful yellow flowers. These have the scent of coconut which floats on the air. The cottage was whitewashed with paint, which was peeling from the surface of the walls. Ivy clung to the cracks in the old herringbone stone. The roof was covered in a thatch with a tall chimney poking out through the straw. Smoke rose skyward from the chimney, from the peat-burning fire below. The interior was always bathed in the glow of candles and the light from the fire. Low-beamed ceilings which were covered in cobwebs were in the room she had, a room where she rested, and where she did all her cooking in old cast-iron pots, suspended over a fire grate. Occasionally a mouse would appear from an opening by the fireplace, only to be chased away by Marmalade. The fireplace had a large oak mantelpiece where Elanora placed rocks and seashells from the beach. Driftwood was piled against the cottage wall in readiness for the winter, to keep her warm against the elements. Elanora had a large cauldron which she used when creating her magical spells. Elanora was a sea witch, who was revered by some and feared by others. People used to come and see her to get a potion to help with illness, or to protect from evil spirits. Some even wanted love potions, in the hope of winning someone's heart. Elanora had often been mocked because of how she looked. Her appearance had often frightened children, caused adults to look away in shock. People used to shout, "Witch!" whenever she passed by. The congregation of the local church of St. Mary's had threatened to have her imprisoned and put away from respectable society. Elanora became quite afraid of what people may do to her, and decided to escape their view, and she found this old empty cottage which overlooked the sea. It was out of prying eyes, where she hoped to live out her life with her beloved cat Marmalade. Elanora began to grow things in her garden. She planted fruit trees, vegetables and herbs. Next she got some chickens which ran around in the garden. All these things would feed her throughout the year, and they would also become something far more powerful when she began doing her magic. Elanora often sat overlooking the sea, and on one particular occasion a storm was coming in from the horizon. Elanora looked as the storm drew closer, fascinated by the rolling thunder, the flashes of lightning as they lit the darkened sky. As she looked on, she thought that she was able to see strange figures, which appeared to be dancing within the storm. The wind blew and the storm drew closer and closer. Waves like mountains crashed onto the rocks below. Salty spray rose high into the air, the wind carrying it inland, wetting her. The taste of salt was on her lips. She felt so excited and alive. She tried to stand up, but the wind blew her back to the ground. The dancing figures within the storm seemed to be coming ever closer. Suddenly the storm was upon her, the figures danced around her, and she became dizzy and she passed out. When Elanora woke up, the storm had passed, the sea was calm once again. Everything around was peaceful. Elanora, however, felt different, as though something had happened within that storm, something which had entered her being. Elanora looked round, and wherever she looked she seemed to be looking through brand new eyes at a completely different world. She felt empowered. A new energy was coursing through her veins. There was knowledge within her head that she had never known before. The secrets of the earth and the oceans were hers to use. This was the advent of the Sea Witch. Elanora began to experiment with her herbs, creating potions for all manner of illness, using chicken bones to forecast the future. Daily her powers grew. Her cauldron was never off the boil, bubbling away, while Elanora uttered spells. She wrote everything in a book of shadows, using a new language she had been given during the storm. None but her would ever understand what was written. People would pass by the cottage and would see Elanora tending the garden. A brave few would stop and spend the time of day with her. Occasionally she would give them one of her potions to help them with whatever ailments they may have. Over time, word of Elanora the witch spread, and others came from surrounding areas seeking help, which she willingly gave free of charge. Word soon spread to the Church of St. Mary's in Robin Hood's Bay that there was a witch nearby who was casting spells and creating magic. The vicar, Isaac Stone, became enraged, saying, "It's the work of the devil, I tell you. We must cast her out from where she is and bring her to justice." The congregation was split in their thoughts. Some were for the idea, whilst others were against. Those who were against were told that if they did not follow God's will, they would be cast into hell and eternal judgment on the final day. The enraged group gathered together and set out along the coastal path with the intent of casting her out of her cottage and then to burn it to the ground before handing her over to the authorities for judgment. Marmalade the cat seemed quite agitated. Elanora tried to comfort him, but she could not. Opening the cottage door, she saw in the distance a torchlight and could hear faint shouting. Suddenly from nowhere a man appeared in front of her. He was out of breath as he had been running. Elanora recognised him as one she had helped when his son had been struck down with an illness which would have taken his life if she had not given him her spell. Gathering himself together, he told her what the church people were going to do, told her to escape. Elanora looked out again and stepped through the cottage door into the garden. Raising her hands to the sky, she chanted, "O great sky spirits who created me through the storm, I call upon you now. I, whose life is in your power, excuse me, grant me this. Cause such a darkness to fall upon the land that they will not be able to see. Create a tempest to blow them off course. Give my home a shield of invisibility, that they may never find me again. For too long I've been an outcast, for too long I've been ridiculed by the church. No more, I say, no more. So mote it be." Turning back towards her cottage, she could see the man cowering in fear as the blackness began to roll in over the sea. The storm winds grew and a tempest so powerful that those who had wished her harm had to flee. They ran from the ferocity of the storm. "Fear not," she told the man. "The storm will not harm you." "Nor will I, because you have done me a great service." The shield of invisibility was there in place, and the cottage was now hidden from the sight of mortal man, and would remain that way until Elanora had exacted her vengeance. Weeks passed by and Elanora's powers grew. Every day she would spend hours calling on the spirit world for help, speaking to the oceans and the storms, until she had control over them, and control them she would. So, that old fool Isaac Storm thinks I am of the devil, does he? Well, the devil I will show him. Her anger grew daily towards this clergyman and his congregation. They would be facing their day of judgment very soon. Elanora watched and waited for that perfect time. That time when all talk of her from the people of Robin Hood's Bay had died away. No longer was the name Elanora mentioned. All assumed that she had used her magic to transport herself and her cottage to another place. Harmony had returned to the congregation once again. Elanora waited and waited with great patience. Her anger was now burning bright, and the time for vengeance had come. Each one of the congregation would pay dearly for the way they had treated her. Elanora set out along the coastal path towards Robin Hood's Bay, staring out into the sea, knowing that it was in her control. Elanora raised her hands to the sky and invoked the spirits of the elements to come forward and help her with what she must do. She called upon the spirits of the deep to come forth and help. Arms stretched out towards the sea, she spoke. "As the wind blows from the north, protect me. As the wind blows from the south, protect me. As far as the east is from the west, remove any obstacles in my way. Remove all those who sought to harm me. Hail, Hecate, from the dark realm. Pour forth thy vengeance upon them. I lowly bow before you. Sununos, I call you in the wooded glen. Be with me this night. So mote it be." Elanora could hear the church bells ringing to call in the congregation for evening prayer. A feeling of revulsion passed through her body. Thinking of who was within the church building, she knew it would be filled with hypocrites and adulterers, who were there to pray to their unseen God for forgiveness of the transgressions they had committed. How pathetic, she thought to herself, that these pillars of community all have skeletons within their closets. They don't want to be found out, and to salve their conscience they pray in the hope that they will receive atonement from God. God may well atone their transgressions, but I, Elanora, have no intention of forgiving them. Elanora heard the church organ wheeze into life. The congregation began singing, "Oh, the deep, deep love of Jesus, vast, unmeasured, boundless, free, rolling as a mighty ocean in its fullness over me. Underneath me, all around me, is the current of thy love, carrying me ever onward to my glorious rest above." A rest that they would be receiving much sooner than they thought. The church service was over, and it was a tradition that congregation moved to the Dolphin Inn, where they would drink and smoke their pipes and generally gossip about everybody who was in attendance. Elanora peered in through one of the old mullioned windows and could see a distorted picture of Isaac Storm, the main instigator, who was trying to destroy her and her cottage. Elanora walked across the beach beneath the inn and began to invoke the elements. She found an old bottle which had been washed ashore. Picking it up, a smile came across her face. She put the bottle in her bag and continued. Raising her hands again to the sky, she called out. Staring into the sea, she called out. The sky darkened. The wind began to blow and the waves were growing in stature as they moved towards the shore. Soon the waves of the sea were as mountains. They roared as they rushed towards the coast, smashing into the tidal defence wall, throwing spray high into the darkness and into the windows of the inn. Those inside the inn were fearing the worst and must find a way of escape. The inn, as it looked as though it was about to be engulfed in a raging, boiling cauldron which was the sea. 3 men came out of the inn. Elanora looked on, but these were innocent men who had never troubled her or tried to remove her. She let them pass by up the steep hill to safety. Another 3 men appeared in the doorway of the inn. This time Elanora felt bile rise in her stomach. Lifting her hand, she ordered a huge wave to come crashing down on them, which it did, and as it receded it pulled them back towards the sea. Tendrils of seaweed wrapped around their legs, and fight as they might, they could not escape its grip. Elanora commanded another wave which crashed over them, and then they were gone from view. Another 3 men tried to leave the inn, and as they battled against the wind which pushed them backwards towards the beach, Elanora lifted her hand to the sky, then threw her hand towards the ground, and as she did this, lightning struck the 3 men and carried them along with the others into death. Now there were just another 3 men left within the inn, and one of those was Isaac Storm. He was the one she loathed the most. So pious, yet the very worst of sinners within the village, always hiding behind his dock collar. Elanora had heard the whispers about his adulterous relationships, his cruelty towards his children, receiving payment from smugglers who stored contraband in his crypt. The 3 men left the pub by the way of the cellar which opened out onto the beach. They knew that if they could walk just a short distance, there was a cave which had a secret passage which led to the crypt of the church, which was used by smugglers. Fighting the wind and waves, they edged carefully towards the cave entrance. One of the men looked out into the sea, and there stood among the waves was Elanora. Stuttering, he pointed her out to the others. Isaac Storm shouted, "It's the sea witch, back to seek her vengeance. Hurry up or we will be doomed." Finally they reached the mouth of the cave and were almost washed in by a huge wave, broke around them. Clearly they were now in fear and needed to escape to the crypt as quickly as possible. Elanora stood in the entrance to the cave and raised both her hands to the sky. She invoked the spirits of the dead. Those who had died at sea began to rise at her command. Pointing into the cave, she sent them to catch the men, and then return with them to their watery grave. A few minutes passed and screams were heard from within the cave. The sound of dragging. Suddenly emerging from the darkness were the spirits of the dead, who were holding men. Pointing at Isaac Storm, she ordered the spirits to let him go. He ran back into the cave, not wanting the fate which awaited his friends. The spirits of the undead returned into the deep with the other 2 men who were pleading, "Please, Elanora, save us. Have mercy." Elanora just smiled and said, "And what mercy did you ever show me?" At this they became just another part of the sea, where they will remain forever. Elanora once again turned her attention to Isaac Storm. She walked into the cave and through the secret passageway which led to the crypt. The steps from the crypt were quite steep, As she walked up them into the main body of the church, Isaac Stone was pathetically kneeling at the altar, begging forgiveness for all his wrongdoings and pleading with God for his life. Elanora stood a few feet from him and raised her hands into the air, commanding the controlling winds outside. A gale-force wind began to blow and an icy coldness filled the church. Fear coursed through Isaac Storm's veins. Turning to look at Elanora with a sense of dread, he tried to speak, but no words would come out. He reached out towards her, and as he did, Elanora cast her arm toward the ground, and as she did there was a creaking and a groaning sound. A crucifix from on high was beginning to move, as though by unseen hand, and then it came crashing down on top of Isaac Storm. Elanora moved towards him and knelt down beside him. He was in the final throes of death, staring wide-eyed at her. Elanora sighed in satisfaction. At last she had taken her vengeance on all those who had sought her harm. There was just one more thing she needed to do. Raising her arms to the sky once again, this time invoking the goddess Hecate. Hecate, goddess of magic, witchcraft, the night, moon, ghosts and necromancy. I call upon you now to bring about my last desire. Removing the bottle from her back, she approached Isaac Storm. She removed the stopper and spoke. I call upon you, the soul of Isaac Storm. It is time now for you to leave this earthen vessel. Come out and enter this new vessel. And as he did, Elanora quickly put the stopper back on. She smiled and put the bottle in her bag. The sun began to shine, the sea became calm. Elanora began to walk back towards her cottage along the coastal path. The shield of invisibility had gone. The beautiful yellow flowers of the gorse bushes were everywhere, filling the air with that lovely scent of coconut. Walking towards her gate, she saw Marmalade, the cat, waiting for her. She stroked his fur as she passed, making him purr. The cottage is just there on the coastal path between Ravenscar and Robin Hood's Bay, surrounded by the beautiful yellow gorse bushes. Elanora can be seen in the garden tending to her fruit and vegetables. Smoke can be seen reaching skyward through the chimney of the thatched roof, where the peat fire burns below. Marmalade the cat can be seen chasing mice and basking in the sunshine. If you are ever walking along the coastal path and you come across the cottage, call in and say hello to Elanora. Spend some time and get to know her, and if you're very lucky she will show you her magic, and she will tell you her story. While you are sitting with her and chatting, take a look on the mantelpiece, and right there in the middle is the bottle containing the soul of Isaac Storm, captured forever until the end of time, trapped between life and death, or until that bottle is opened once again. This is the beginning of a new life for the Sea Witch. Just remember never to offend her, and never ever wish bad things to happen to her. As to this very day, she still has dominion over the wind and waves. Remember the story of her vengeance upon the church congregation who sought her destruction. How do I know this? Because I walked that path. I saw the cottage and I spoke with Elanora. And she really is a delightful soul to talk to. She even gave me this as a parting gift. I have yet to learn how to fly it, but one day, who knows? Right everyone, I hope you've enjoyed what you've heard. I do apologise about my voice. If you have, please hit that like button, leave a comment in the box below, hit the bell icon for any future uploads. And if you're not yet subscribed, just come and join us, it won't cost you a penny. helps the channel grow, and we become part of that bigger community. So as always, I will say to you all, Namaste. Enjoy the rest of Friday, everyone. Bye for now.